something that's kind of bugged me a little bit about Kurtzman's latest, kind of come to Jesus moment, or come to Gene moment in this case regarding Star Trek, is now let's open this world up and see what makes it and do this thing. It's kind of I can kind of get in the vibe of this. This is like the kid who like pulls the wings off of flies because it sounds interesting to see what happens. And everything that he's done to this point, really, it's always been somebody else's franchise. He's not done anything of his own. He's been in the business. He's in his mid-40s. He's been in the business for quite a while. And Transformers, somebody else's property entirely. I mean, Lost, at least, he was in on the team, the create, but Star Trek, Mummy, Transformers, everything he's done so far, of any note, it's been somebody else's stuff. And he's been getting this kick of, disassembling, whatever, and see. How about assembling something in the first damn place, okay? Because so far, all I'm seeing is ripping these established franchises apart just because this sounds interesting. Sometimes, if you're honest about it, it's not that interesting. I mean, you try and make it interesting, you would start forcing stuff in there that doesn't belong. And you betray the entire franchises in the process. They're trying to force feed a story onto Spock that does not fit at all. They're basing a whole plot line on what is essentially a production error. Yeah, the moment and the first pilot, before the character of Spock was really established, he was just the guy on the bridge with the funny ears. The computer-minded first officer was number one. Oh, who they apparently have got to make trans. I mean, don't trust IMDb completely, but there's no reason, for them to lie about this one. Episode 4 coming up is they're going to apparently, the character's going to be revealed as trans, and the picture they show on there is Rebecca Romaine is number one. And it just kind of follows, tall, throaty voiced, female type. Yeah, she's a tranny. Somewhere beyond, Major Barrett is screaming obscenities and, about ready to, break out one of her prized Dodger collectible bats and, bash somebody over the head with it. If they could just, there's something new, something getting into uncharted territory, okay? There's quite a bit of this period that actually we could piece together, okay? We don't necessarily know the details, but we knew what the ships looked like, what the technology was like, where people were roughly. You had Spock on the Enterprise as a science officer. You had Kirk was over on the Farragut, probably. Maybe by now he's commanding that destroyer as a lieutenant commander, probably. Or doing that teaching stint at the academy. We managed to piece together some things. Kirk's backstory is the most confusing because it contradicts a few places. But we can work out a few things. Like, I figured the stint on the Republic, that was a training cruise, like final year of the academy, and he was doing good enough at that point. He'd already been promoted to ensign. It happens in academies. You'll get the officer rank before you leave. Like the last year, and then you graduate. It's like a Lieutenant JG or something. Or you're already well on the path to get that JG ring. And figure after the incident on Tycho 4 with the vampire cloud, took some time off, back at the academy. And figure maybe that's where he met Gary. Or who knows, maybe they knew each other before, but basically Lieutenant Kirk, teaching class at the academy while he gets over his PTSD, I guess, for watching half his crew get sucked dry. And Gary tries to loosen him up by firing a lab assistant at him, which everyone figures is Carol Marcus. But moving on along, maybe sometime after that gets back out there. And the backstory they had in the making of Star Trek was that he commanded a destroyer before getting the Enterprise, and it makes sense. Nobody would get that kind of ship in their first command. Okay, that's a major ship of the line. You want some experience under that, which just makes JJ even more galling. Like, oh, Here's a guy who was about to be thrown out of the academy. In a week, he's now promoted 6 full pay grades to captain and given command of the newest ship in the fleet. Yeah, sure, that happens a lot. That's their idea of kind of taking things apart and seeing how it actually happened. No. That's how you take things apart and you totally destroy it. Now, I'm going to see how, one of their, I guess it may have been Variety, but they're going to talk about how Mikey Spock prepared Spock for Kirk. Bullshit. Again, we're taking a plot line based on what is essentially a production error. Because when they put this thing together for the Cage, if they hadn't been under such a gun, I'm pretty sure they would have said, oh, we should snip that out. That doesn't fit the character anymore. But they're, they were so under the gun, they were in danger of missing their air date, which is pretty much death for a TV series, especially at that time. So that's what, part of the genius of the menagerie. It usually, the old tactic of, when you're behind is you do a clip show. Usually it's where they're just sitting around for whatever reason, either, someone's sick in the hospital and everything. Remember that time? And you show a clip from a previous show. The menagerie not only is a clip show, but a 2-part clip show of footage nobody had seen before. That's where I put, like Roddenberry was an okay writer. He won an award or two, but he was, he wasn't, setting the world on fire necessarily. But he was a genius as a producer. And I think if he had accepted that, and that's no small feat. That's not really settling for anything. It takes a good mind to come up with these things on the fly and make them work and keep a show going like that. So this was a brilliant part of of being a producer. Because the studio was wondering, hey, we spent a lot of money on this pilot. Is there some way you can make use of it? No, let me take it. And you not only you give yourself a couple of weeks to get caught up on everything else, and there were no problems beyond that point making air dates. They needed those 2 weeks for everyone to get. They think they shot the new stuff for Menagerie in like 4 days. And again, for a 2-parter, that's an incredible. That was a turn for a regular episode. Normally, regular episode takes 5-6 days, 7 days sometimes. And there was a lot of overlap. It's real fun looking at the production dates for some of these episodes. There's a lot of overlap in there where they're shooting some scenes. This is from the week before. So okay, now So yeah, they gave us those 2 weeks on 4 days production time. Everyone else could take a breather for a minute. And again, and you give this, suddenly the Enterprise now has a history. You get a backstory there. You get a little bit of what Spock was doing. Like, it's no longer just you pick up with Corbomite maneuver. Well, if that had aired on time, or man trap, depending on where you put the marker. It's like now, this ship has been around a while. And then Roddenberry he wanted the ship to have some history to it. It wasn't just like in Next Generation where it's like they're still peeling the plastic wrapping off parts of the Enterprise D. It's like brand spanking nothing. There's still finding styrofoam peanuts and things. No, this ship has been around a while. It's got a history. Not everyone's all new and spanking. They're in there. They're already working team. But except for the one thing where Spock is grinning like a monkey with the plants, it's like Spock is not that inconsistent with the rest of the episode. I mean, he's shouting a little bit, but he shouted to him, about the first 5-6 episodes of the original series too. That's part of being a executive officer. Is you make sure the commands are heard. Nobody's gonna screw around. So finally, they figured out, this is a pretty small room here at the bridge. It's only 30 feet. They can hear you, Leonard. You don't need to yell. And I imagine he got tired of yelling too. So he may have brought up, why am I yelling? He's right over there. But anyway, but it was also, like the old naval tradition, yelling out so everyone on deck hears you, and but also you filter in the difference, like with the Orville. Let's just put it 25th century. After Nemesis, you're right on the cusp of the 25th century. There's like the 2490s or 2390s at that point. You're almost in the into the 25th. So this was, if we take it that and everything I have seen things say different, that the Orville was going to be a post-Nemesis Star Trek series set on a different ship, one a little lower down. It wasn't going to be the Enterprise. It was going to be a lower level science vessel, I guess called the Orville. And yeah, it makes, we're moving onward, just a slight, the sets could be the same, just change the uniforms, change the Planetary Union to the Federation, put nacelles on that boat. It's Star Trek. It would take very minor changes, to have John DeLange show up and, oh, here you are, poof, and boom. Star Trek Orville. In fact, I would laugh myself silly if after the merger, which is happening, it's coming. The moves are already there. They're not going to wait 2 years. They get that. Sherry Redstone gets control here. It's like Kurtzman's bye-bye because they want to fix. They know what's going on with Star Trek and they want it fixed. And it's not going to happen with Kurtzman involved. Clearly, he has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't know when he's screwing up. But it would be hilarious if they decide to work out a deal with Fox, and it would. I think it would tickle McFarlane too. That guess what? You want to do a Star Trek show? You're doing a Star Trek show, and you don't need to start over. We'll just we'll change the uniforms, but do a slight change on the ship instead of the big loops back there. We'll work out a secondary hull and put some nacelles on there. Bingo. I mean, you can tell there's some holdovers there because we're in the first part as the USS Orville. Do you see any USS on that ship on the outside? No. Because I think we're still talking, there was a holdover from when it was a Star Trek pitch. And I wouldn't even change the aliens. I would keep them as Moclan and Salayans, and no reason we got to stick with the same old alien. It's a big galaxy. I think Moclans and Klingons could coexist very nicely. You got some weird. Dan doesn't have to be turn into an Andorian. But the thing is, you could bring in some Vulcans and Andorians on top of all this and have some real fun. But Kurtzman, I don't think he couldn't do a show like the Orville. It would never occur to him. It's easy to latch on to a existing franchise and get into a part where it's like it's already been pretty well established. What's what, and just start tearing things apart, and then wondering why the cat's dead because you wanted to see what made it work. That's the kind of mentality we're working with here, They're not interested in them growing or they want to, take things apart and put them together in weird little ways. And this interesting, yeah, look, I switched the legs around. Isn't that different? Yeah, it's also fatal, you idiot. You just killed it, Yeah, are they going to ruin Spock? They've already ruined Spock just by what we've known so far and what we've seen in the damn trailers. They're trying to imply that the I guess with the beard, that he's been kind of letting himself go here. But look at those pictures again. Yeah, he's fuzzy up top. Neck is clean. This is what happens if you don't shave for a while, guys. This is the ugly reality here. And it would not have been that much for him to say, just don't shave anything. No! Nicely, neatly trimmed on his neck. Which makes the beard a choice, not neglect. This is not Spock, okay? This is a hipster with pointy ears, with a mop-top haircut, who is damaged, who doesn't have any motor control, and has no business being in Starfleet, and never would have made past the entrance exam, okay? I don't care who his dad was. And they're ripping apart that, just by including Mikey Spock in there, and the whole thing about, and trying to justify the whole thing of why Spock went out to... They never really went into why Spock left and declined the Academy and went to Science Academy and went to Starfleet. If you just take it back to what it was originally, when Spock was an only child, Sybok is slightly forgivable because I guess there's an age difference there. So Sybok really wasn't around much by the time Spock went to the Academy. It was like, Because when Sybok left, Spock was still a kid. So you can barely... And again, I've already written off most of Star Trek V as a drunken ghost story told around this campfire after a few too many helps of the secret ingredient. But when you have another quasi-sibling in the mix of about the same age, and now it's a whole different dynamic, okay? There's no longer an only child who daddy never really properly loved, and saying, "Screw you! You can't tell me how to live, old man. I'm going to Starfleet." You're not doing a whole different set of things here, where it's like, and they've also destroyed Sarek too, because now Burnham's supposed to be the experiment. What the hell do you have a half-human, half-Vulcan son for? Okay? That required a hell of a lot more commitment than just, picking up some waif on the street, which is essentially what they did with Burnham. And if anything, she should have been returned to Earth, to whatever relatives are back there, instead of, no, we'll raise her on Vulcan. She's not a Vulcan. Being a Vulcan is not something you can pick up, like it, which also goes back to the whole thing of why they were writing her in the first place, where she's predicting that approach of a storm, down to the 10th of a second. One, the human brain doesn't operate that way. There's no way in hell she could have made that kind of prediction. And plus, she was wrong. So it kind of goes back to, why is she damn special? Everything she does is wrong. She talks about being logical. She's on the verge of going to an emotional breakdown while she's saying it. It's like this. I've seen better writing on gum wrappers, okay? I really wonder about the people who say, "Oh, this is wonderfully written." It's horribly written. For any television, not just for Star Trek, but for television in general. This show's incompetent. It's incoherent. The writing is there to justify some big shebang moment they want to get to, and not because of anything actually organic to the story. So, Kurtzman really needs to be fired, and I need to really do some serious thinking about his career choices here. Like, try creating something of your own for a change, instead of trying to dismantle and dissect somebody else's property. Because you're not doing yourself any favors, and sure as I'm not doing. Because guess what? At the end of the day, again, everything's moving towards new regime coming at CBS, Discovery, and everything else they got lined up being put in the in the hopper. Because there's some very clear indications. No, Discovery is over after this season, because they're moving production on to LA for the Picard show. They're not putting in for the paperwork to continue production of Discovery in LA. Means guess what? Discovery's over. Because there's a Discovery in Canada. And they're not moving everybody down here to continue with these. No, they're preparing the trash sets up there. And the cat's about to interfere with something here. Come on. What you doing? What you doing, kitty? Because LA, Uniontown and all that, they got to put in for tax paperwork, get some tax incentives. That's why they moved to Canada in the first place. Wouldn't have to do that. But they're not sticking around in Canada. So again, and Patrick Stewart doesn't want to go to Canada. He's quite happy in LA right now. So yeah. If they're going to continue with Patrick Stewart in this show, with any luck, they'll keep the tap dance going long enough for the merger to happen. Kurtzman has shown the door. Some writers brought in who know what the hell they're talking about and what they're doing. Like maybe ones who have actually written for Star Trek before and actually written for the character of Picard. And get rid of this nonsense. This idiocy about, his life is... Why would his life take a serious turn with Romulus, or the Romulan Empire gone? Especially if he's already retired. He's not in Starfleet anymore. He's not dealing with the Romulans on any real level. It's not like they're a major trade partner. They're a major adversary. There's been basically a Cold War going on for about 70 years. So the whole idea of Picard's life going through on people because the Romulans folded up shop. And again, if part of the process was Romulus is gone and Vulcan is gone, guess what? It's not just the fact that the only reference to the Romulan of Romulus being destroyed was in JJ Trek. destruction of Vulcan happened in that Kelvin timeline. Which means, guess what? That whole thing takes place in the Kelvin timeline. It's not the original series. It's not, not the original timeline. So it's not the Picard we know. So it's that little 25% different thing. And again, I just, the only thing that says why, Vulcan was, or Romulus destroyed in the prime time is JJ Trek. So like, no, it happened in J Trek. It didn't happen in the regular timeline because there's no outside source. But it's not like they're pulling something from Next Generation about Romulus being destroyed and working on that. No, they put that up themselves. So it's like they can keep it themselves, keep it out of the damn timeline. I really need to, we need to establish it. Yeah, prime timeline. Prime timeline is not the canonical timeline. If you're willing to play with it, yeah, prime timeline. That's what Discovery's in, and the J Trek movies was an offshoot of that timeline. It has nothing to do with the original timeline, which is, and the graphic I had in that one video, it's behind a nice little legal barrier where nobody can cross that until that non-compete clause goes bye-bye. Which, I think depending on how well the lawyers argue, it could be later this year that thing finally expires. They can tell Bad Robot and Secret Hideaway and all the other idiots to go pound sand. They can bring in some experienced writers and do proper, actual Star Trek that counts for anything. Whether or not it'd be any good is another issue entirely. But at least it would no longer be, pretending. I am so sick. It's Prime. It's Prime. Okay, yeah, let it be Prime. As long as Prime is something else than what you're thinking it is. I'm not even sure I like that term in the first. It's the Prime time. That's another thing they invented themselves. They've never called the Prime timeline anything else but what they called it. Because you had Spock Prime and then there are, whiny little Spock. You don't notice why, their Vulcans are pink? How do you get a pink person with green blood? You don't. That's why it's kind of yellow stuff because of the green blood. They thought this stuff out. I mean, this was there's a whole thing about how they thought out what Spock would look like. And they're trying to establish the look. I mean, originally, I thought, they were going to make him kind of red because they were still thinking maybe from Mars or something other. But black and white TVs looked like it was in blackface. That didn't go over too well. So they had to think about, well, let's see, he's got green blood. What does that mean? Well, kind of coppery type thing. Well, okay, well, then what would green blood make? Make it look kind of yellow. So they worked on that, and they actually developed a specific shade of yellow for Spock. LN1, Leonard Nimoy 1, and it's still registered with the makeup union out there. It's a very specific, shade of yellow makeup, and that's what Vulcans, use. That's what you use to make someone look like a Vulcan. And they just tossed that out the window, because part of the thing, when CBS licensed it to Paramount, everything's got to be distinctly different. The old number, 25% different. I guess in the case of Vulcans, they are pink. They're no longer, yellowish. They're still bleed green, but they're as pink as a newborn baby boy. So. Not sure I'm going with this right now, but we need. I think at this point we're just kind of waiting for the end because season 2's coming, whether we like it or not. The merry band of locusts are going to continue to feast on the I don't know, something, because again, actual Star Trek is not affected by this because actual Star Trek is behind that legal wall. But there's been some question about how I can do the concordance with CBS. What are they going to think about you doing that? Okay. The concordance was created in a time back in the, first one was in 1968, and then the big one from Valentine was in 74, 76. Back then, they were a little looser with the licensing requirements. So the Star Trek concordance is licensed, it is registered to be Joe Trimble, not to Star Trek, not to Paramount, not to certainly not to CBS. Now we're trying to get a hold of CBS to work out, what the actual status is and see if they're willing to play ball with us. But for the moment, that's why the last one in '92, she was able to put it out with the title Star Trek Concordance because she owns the copyright to it. So that's not an issue right there. And now again, we still got to make sure we got all the the I's dotted and T's crossed and all that heavy horse stuff. And also, we're still waiting to hear back from them because they're a little busy right now. Being sued for plagiarism and all that heavy stuff. But on that front, she can, especially since it's been long enough since the last one, the rights are reverted back to her. So I don't have to worry about, dealing with Titan Publishing and all them. The one way or the other, yes, that update is happening. We're kind of, put on the back burner because of my circumstances right now. Because I really can't work, from the field very well. I need to be set up with an office situation where I can actually sit and do some research and work on this. Now, I'm still picking up bits and pieces here and there and logging on my poor laptop is overloaded. And I got stuff down here with us. It's in storage at the moment, but I got access to it if I have to. From original versions of the Concordance. I also got Ruth Berman's anti-Concordance. Well, not the anti-Concordance, but her comments on things. So I think that as much as possible on all sides here, and also the and every version, the Ballantine and the Titan, and the found them real cheap, so I could tear them apart and put them in binders. And also got the boat anchor, the last Star Trek Encyclopedia. That one apparently spearheaded by John Van Sitter. So that's another hopeful sign that he's now in charge there. So put a damper on Kurtzman's more destructive tendencies. But I kind of wonder, again, getting back to the lawsuit thing. Again, I'm going to comment to somebody put on there, but I'm not sure he was making the same point because I'm not sure because it was kind of phrased a little weirdly. But all these people are cheering for CBS to prevail in the tardigrades lawsuit. They seem to be all hardcore Axonar supporters. They're supporting the very company that slapped their asses down for copyright infringement. Explain the logic here, okay? You would think, really, after all that happened, that the Axonar fans would be jumping to Anas Abdin's side. But no, there's some of those vicious ones, and it was like, no, you're not gonna win, you're an idiot, you don't have a leg to stand on this one. Actually, what I've been seeing so far, he's got plenty of legs to stand on this, and because part of the big defense that CBS has been doing after, this is this is complex. This happens all the time in sci-fi. No, it doesn't. Namely, any other sci-fi story that involved using giant blue tardigrades to travel instantaneously anywhere in the world, anywhere in the galaxy, instantaneously. The only other time I've heard that one about traveling anywhere and just be anywhere in the world, anywhere in the galaxy, anywhere in the universe, simultaneous is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with the Infinite Improbability Drive. And that was a joke. Okay? Unfortunately, a joke they took seriously in Voyager's Threshold. So, but that's it. And again, tardigrade. I didn't even really know the word tardigrade until this lawsuit blew up. Okay, or until the. I mean, I think I'd seen seen documentaries here and there where they talk about these itty bitty things, but it never registered that, remember the name, because never went back to it. But big blue, sparkly, tardigrades wrapping this up, and boom, anywhere in the galaxy you want to go. It's that's pretty distinctive stuff there. Okay, a little too distinctive to be a coincidence. So that alone is enough to hang them on there, and the fact that everything else. You got these, these characters look pretty damn close to what showed up on screen. They've even changed the uniforms. Were changed from what we know they were like pre-TOS, Cage and Where Man Was Gone Before styling, to look like the ones in the game. I mean, I have a perfect analogy in this, but I've been told not to because it, it would be considered stepping on someone else's territory. But no, this is not groundless, and it's going forward. This whole thing about no, they got to show us. No, they do not have to show. Anas is not having to show where they stole it because that would be freaking impossible, especially in the online world. But CBS has to turn over everything they've got regarding discovery and development and everything else over to Abdeen's team. And try and figure out when this blue tardigrade thing showed up and became a part of the show, and again, design changes and everything else. So everything they've got is not going to be part of the record. And Anas's team of lawyers is going to start going through it. And the fact that every claim that CBS is trying to make to get this thing thrown out has been, no, not happening. It's not been thrown up. It's not frivolous. This is moving forward. It's still a ways from trial, but this is proceeding forward here. This gets to a jury, which is what Abdeen has asked for. He's asked for a jury trial on this, which I think is good because it won't be argued away on technical legalities, legal technicalities here. Well, this doesn't follow that particular thing. Just in front of a jury, you start looking at what's there. It's like, it's obvious they stole it. Like I said, just big blue tardigrade. What do? This one, you can bloom anywhere in the world, I keep saying world, anywhere in the universe. Just bloom like that without all the tedious mucking about in hyperspace. What does this one do? Same thing. Name me one other story anywhere that involves a big blue giant, bug doing that. You can't. There are none. And there's a pretty clear record how long this thing's been in development because he's been posting progress, work in progress, videos for like 3 years on his YouTube channel and on Steam and everything else. And there's been plenty of traffic on that site. Again, being charitable, it could very be just one of the staffers. Either, he's a gamer, he spotted it on the and figured, I can pinch that. Or doing some research on this thing of, what can we do here? Maybe thinking it was a defunct game that hadn't gone anywhere, and we can get away with this, and not realizing it's still in development. Or most heinous, they deliberately stole it. Either way, it's not going to be looked on kindly by the court. They're going to get nailed. It's a matter of time. And they're not dealing with some podunk guy that, you stole my character, Captain Kirk, from my fanfic I wrote and never showed anybody. No, that's, because that was the response when they first thing, we'll stop using the game and we won't sue you for plagiarism. That was, they threatened not to sue him for stealing his own idea. And they ran into a buzzsaw with that because you just personally insulted the man. I don't think he needs the money. This is a matter of pride and a matter of justice for him. So, you look through the complaint. I've looked over the actual legal, and it's like, he doesn't just want a settlement. He wants this thing shut down. He wants this thing to cease and go away and never be seen again. He is personally insulted. He's out for blood. And a lot of us on this thing are hoping he gets it too. Because frankly, the entire show is an affront to the entire franchise. There's no way to incorporate this into the official record. It's too divergent. It's like you got the timeline, you got, up to Cage, and then you got a big old, great big, ugly knot. It's basically a giant malignant tumor on the thing, and it's supposed to pick up right again into where no man has gone before. Somehow or other, we got the cage and the ship and the uniforms and where no one's gone before with a bunch of the same uniforms and it's the same model ship. It's just a slight, couple of detail differences on the thing and the slightly altered hand, weapons. And somewhere in between, it turns into Discovery and then turns back. No. There's not a writer on the planet that can make sense of that, and these guys are certainly not writers of that caliber to even attempt that. They can't even write a coherent plot. They're going to resolve that kind of continuity knot. No. That's what I'm saying. The only way to The only way to resolve this one is just snip it out and pretend it never happened. Which is not unheard of, really. Remember, Highlander 2? Just gone. The Renegade cut was just to make it a little more palatable, but it's still, that's not recognized as anything part of the Highlander continuity at all. It's gone. And I think there's been a couple of, the famous, Bobby in the shower thing, which exiles an entire season of Dallas. Unfortunate for them, they didn't, the producers on Knots Landing didn't get the memo on that. They kept going on the same storylines. They were bouncing off of that one. So there's but since they're not dealing with any other shows and that thing, it just, it didn't happen. Just, and again, if Abdeen gets the whole thing, guess what? Those of you who have bought the Discovery DVD sets, treasure them. Because they will be yanked from the shelves as a result of this lawsuit. It will be yanked from CBS All Access. Any and all merchandising, which there really hasn't been any because nobody wants anything. And the licensees don't want it. McFarlane even announced, I was actually interested in what they had in mind for the phasers. Okay, that looks interesting. Hell of a lot better than what Quantum Mechanics was doing. They had these things, lights up, but that's it. At least the McFarlane ones was going to do something. But no, they dropped it because they did a little market research on their own, and nobody wants this junk. No one wants anything to do with this show. I just now found copies of the Discovery DVDs on the shelves in like Walmart and Target. And that's been how long? And there's only like a few of them. I don't think they're stocking much. I'm still trying to find the Orville though, because I don't know what's going on with that. But Orsi needs to go. Bottom line, that's the main thing. Because I don't think it's a nicety that he's even called a producer. He hasn't really produced anything. He corrupts things. He takes them and mutates them and warps them around and says, look, see, isn't this great? Isn't this interesting? No, it's not. It's disgusting. You're taking, you're taking franchises that people have devoted, good chunks of their lives to and just warped them beyond recognition and wonder why people are upset. Because I've had to hear Sonequa Martin Green going on, but a black woman and the thing. It's like, lady, do the names Nichelle Nichols, Avery Brooks, and Kate Mulgrew ring a bell? Because everything you're citing there, yeah, they did it like, at the latest was like over 20 years ago. In the show's case, we're talking over 50 years ago. Okay, you are so late to the party. Of course, maybe if you had actually watched the show, instead of just having to walk by while someone else is watching. Oh, that's a Star Trek show. Do a little research, 1 into the show and 2 into the fans. So you can stop putting your foot in your mouth every time you open your yap about how great this is, because they haven't done this before. We did it back in the day before you were born, lady. All right. You're not just preaching to the choir, you're chewing out the choir for stuff that we pioneered in the first damn place, okay? You wonder why you're getting blowback? There you go. Yeah. Anyway. PayPal, Patreon down below. We got to get the viewing hours up. I still got over 800 to go before we can get this thing remonetized. So we got to the subscription numbers are picking up a little bit. Yeah, that's every day. I have like 1 or 2 more. So I think we're to the point where it's going to sustain itself for a while. So now we just got to get the rest of the stuff done. And I am shopping for that model. I'm hopefully I think my next paycheck around there, I'm going to pick out an old 18-inch Enterprise model. And that would be the one. I was, okay, you want me to see me build this thing? Let's get this thing up so we can remonetize and see me build this thing blindfolded. I'm still debating whether or not how old a version to get. The main thing is going to be price, whatever I can get for cheap. I don't want to pay more than like $25 total for the whole thing. When I bought it back in the day, it was like $3. So, but the easiest one would be one of the late issue ones because it's just insert the thing and then strut them in the hull done. The earlier ones, it's either meshing up the little half moon slot thing or the infamous the little lozenge through the loop. That was tough when you're looking at it. Imagine being blindfolded. But I'll figure that out later. But right now, we need to get this thing up so we can get this thing monetized and get making some money here and get this thing growing. Because it's been a little frustrating here. I've been working at this for 2 years. Seriously. Mainly because it's the only thing I've got any control over. Because I can't even get hired at McDonald's down here. We're at this point, we're the only thing holding us back down here is the fact that we got nowhere else to go at the moment. We might be coming soon. There's something, possibly going to bring one maybe in Cleveland. But until that happens, I'm going to keep plugging away while I'm going here. Because other channels, it's like, yeah, I went screaming by me. I mean, at one point, I'm giving Doomcock shoutouts to try and help him out, and you go, guess it says a lot, and you have, processed voice, funny helmet, and a fluffy Cthulhu sidekick. Well, that guy was a cat. So, PayPal, Patreon, other links down below, and we will get at you later.